Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and look at the absolute bedrock of any successful language syllabus, needs analysis. If you've ever wondered how the truly great language courses are built from the ground up, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack the theories, the frameworks, and the exact step-by-step procedures to make sure your teaching hits the mark, literally every single time.
Now think about this for a second. Why do some language courses completely flop, while others succeed so brilliantly? Well, the answer usually boils down to one simple thing. Was the course designed around what the teachers wanted to teach, or what the learners actually needed to learn? For the longest time, traditional approaches just focused on the mechanics, grammar, syntax, without ever stopping to ask what the student was actually going to do with the language out there in the real world. That major disconnect? That's exactly why needs analysis was born.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be covering 1. Defining needs analysis. 2. Target versus present situations. 3. The 3-step framework. 4. Gathering the right data. 5. The 8-step procedure. And finally, 6. A real-world example.
Let's hit Section 1. Defining needs analysis, the crucial first step in syllabus design. At its absolute core, needs analysis answers a pretty simple but profound question. What must the learner be able to do, and what can they already do? This is a concept that really gained massive traction back during the English for Specific Purposes, or ESP movement in the 1970s. As the demand exploded for English in really specific jobs, think nurses, engineers, pilots, linguists realized that just teaching general, everyday English simply wasn't cutting it anymore. They needed a systematic way to figure out the very specific demands of those situations. So needs analysis becomes that essential first step, happening way before any objectives, content, or materials are even chosen. And this beautifully illustrates how scholars Hutchinson and Waters broke the whole thing down. They made a massive contribution by splitting this into two main buckets: target needs and learning needs. Now, under target needs, we have three crucial pieces. First, necessities, which are the hard, objective demands of the target situation. Basically, what you simply must know to survive there. Then, lacks, which is the gap between what you need to know and what you already know. And finally, wants. And these are entirely subjective. You really can't ignore wants because this accounts for the learner's actual personal motivation. Meanwhile, on the other side, learning needs cover the actual path, the process, and the conditions the learner needs to successfully absorb those target skills.
Moving right into Section 2, Target versus Present Situations, Identifying the Learning Gap.
So picture this as a direct comparison. On one hand, you have the Target Situation Analysis, or TSA. This is the future goal. It focuses entirely on what the learner will eventually need to actually do with the language. Are they writing complex academic lab reports, negotiating massive business deals, taking medical histories? That gets compared directly against the Present Situation Analysis, the PSA. The PSA is your baseline. It establishes exactly where the student currently stands, their existing abilities, strengths, weaknesses, and even their preferred learning styles, all before the course even kicks off.
And here is the key takeaway. The space between those two situations, between the future requirement and the present reality, is the learner's deficiency. And closing that exact gap, that becomes the entire driving purpose of your language course. Literally everything you design is built to bridge that specific space.
All right, Section 3, the 3-step framework, Brown's systematic approach.
J.D. Brown takes this whole complex process and distills it down into 3 really logical steps. Step 1 is making fundamental decisions. You have to figure out exactly who is involved. Sure, you have the target group, the students, but you also have the audience, like the teachers and admins who actually have to use the data, plus the needs analysts themselves and resource groups like future employers. Step 2 is gathering the information, figuring out exactly what you're going to ask and how you're going to ask it. And then step 3 is actually taking all that data and using it to set your goals, write your tests, and build materials that actually work.
Let's dig into Section 4. Gathering the right data, tools for needs analysis. Before you even think about picking your tools, you've got to make sure you're asking the right questions. Scholar Alison Rossett suggests sorting your questions into 5 distinct buckets. You start with problems, like what specific hurdles are learners hitting when talking to native speakers? Next is priority. Out of reading, writing, listening, and speaking, which one is genuinely the absolute most essential? Then ability questions, which usually look like pretests to spot weaknesses. Attitude questions are super important too. How do students feel they learn best? Do they love grammar drills, or do they thrive in open conversation? And finally, solutions.
This is where you actually ask the participants what changes they think might fix their own learning roadblocks. Okay, so once you know what you're asking, you need the right instruments to ask it. Brown outlines 6 main categories, and you basically just pick the one that fits your context. Got a massive group of hundreds of students? Questionnaires are going to be your best friend for gathering that data efficiently. Need really deep, qualitative insights? Sit down and do one-on-one interviews. And sometimes you don't even need to ask the students anything at all. You can just use direct observation. You literally just go in, watch what they do in their natural environment, and get totally objective, unvarnished data. But listen, regardless of the tool you go with, a test, a survey, whatever, your data collection absolutely must hit 3 vital targets. Number 1, reliability. Your tool has to be consistent. If 2 different people hand out the same survey, they should get pretty much the exact same results. Number 2, validity. It has to actually measure what it claims to measure. If you're trying to test motivation, make sure your questions aren't accidentally just testing advanced vocabulary, right? And number 3, usability. The whole procedure has to be practical and needs to be relatively easy for the designers to administer, score, and actually interpret.
Moving on to Section 5, the 8-step procedure, the cyclical process in action.
So this whole process follows a really logical, cascading flow. You always start right at the top. Step 1, decide your core purpose. Like, why are we even doing this? Step 2, identify the learners and all the stakeholders. Step 3 is choosing your methods, which are those interviews or tests we just talked about. Step 4 is the heavy lifting, actually collecting the data. Then, Step 5 is where the magic really happens. You analyze the data, stacking that target situation up against the present situation. In Step 6, you interpret those results to pinpoint the exact deficiency. And it's only then, at Step 7, that you finally get to design the syllabus, write the objectives, and pick your materials based purely on the evidence.
And please don't miss Step 8, evaluate and review. This is such a crucial takeaway. Needs analysis is not some one-and-done event. It is a highly dynamic, ongoing, cyclical process. Once you run the course, you evaluate how well it worked, and that feedback loops right back up to Step 1 so you can refine and upgrade the syllabus for the very next round.
Let's wrap this up with Section 6, a real-world example, English for nursing.
Imagine for a second that you are the syllabus designer for this course. Your target situation analysis shows that out in the real world, these nurses absolutely must be able to read complex drug labels and explain medical procedures to patients in English. That is the hard necessity. But your present situation analysis, let's say a placement test you gave them on day 1, shows that these students actually already have a pretty solid grasp of general conversational English. What they are entirely lacking, however, is specialized medical vocabulary.
So, boom, you've just identified the gap. Instead of wasting everyone's time for weeks teaching generic grammar rules they already know or starting from scratch with basic greetings, the entire course is engineered specifically to close that one exact deficiency. The syllabus becomes laser-focused on medical vocabulary and patient communication skills. It turns into a highly efficient, super relevant, and incredibly motivating course for those nurses simply because they can see the immediate, real-world value of what they're doing.
And this leaves us with a pretty provocative question for any curriculum designer, teacher, or admin out there watching this explainer. When you finalize a syllabus, or when you step into a classroom, whose needs are you truly serving? Are you just defaulting to the comfort of what you already know how to teach, or have you done the rigorous, vital work of discovering what your learners actually need to thrive? Thanks for exploring the absolute foundation of syllabus design with me, and I really hope this empowers you to mind the gap in your own language programs.